goes without saying that we live in what the Chinese proverb defined as interesting times. At the end of the 20th century, many commentators believed the future looked bright. With the end of the Cold War, the rise of prosperity, stability, and the World Wide Web, the 21st century appeared a panacea on the horizon. But with the new century, nearly one quarter progressed. Few call it a panacea. Terrorism, natural disasters, market crashes, environmental ruin, yawning wealth inequality, wars, plagues, bitter divisions, all have conspired to paint an almost apocalyptic vision of the future, with the young people consistently most disheartened and afraid. It would be enough if mere things were going wrong. Our institutions across the board seem woefully ill-equipped to handle crises of any kind. But additionally, our culture is so polarized that even with an enlightened leader, should such one suddenly come upon us, it would still leave us at a loss for want of a common sense of identity and purpose. Clearly something fundamental has gone awry, with no conventional critique will suffice. The root of our problems appears primordial, and we need to dig deep at the core, hope to find any solution. Hence this brings us to the studies and central thesis of psychiatrist and author Iain McGilchrist in his two books, Master and His Emissaries and The Matter with Things. McGilchrist posits a novel and fascinating collective diagnostic for the heart of what ails what we describe, for want of a better term, modern or postmodern Western civilization. According to extensive research, what is happening today parallels the decline of and fall of the Greco-Roman civilization millennia earlier. Most prominently, he asserts all these events dovetailed a fundamental shift in the common use of the two hemispheres of the brain. Indeed, he believes hemispheric imbalance lie at the crux of societal decline through time immemorial. But to examine and express this concept, McGilchrist first needs to dispel common myths and cliches surrounding the two brain hemispheres that unfortunately discredited this very line of research in the scientific community back in the 1960s and 70s. That misconception was primarily predicated upon the false assumption that hemispheric differences could be boiled down to creative versus rational. According to this distorted reading, the right brain was a painter and the left an accountant. The truth, based on our current neurological understanding, is quite different, and understanding this is vital to solving the larger puzzle. So, what is the true differences of the human brain and hemispheres? The best way to look at it is imagine your eyes are two cameras shooting the landscape. In reality, the two brain hemispheres govern the opposite sides of the body, but for clarity's sake, let's keep them the same. On the left, the camera zooms tightly to see a finely detailed, specific objects strategically honed in on. As it evaluates discrete points of figures it gazes upon, it runs like a stop-motion camera with a lot of choppy still images. With each snapshot, it labels, categorizes, classifies each morsel of data, building summations and frameworks to understand what it comprises. On the right side, we have a camera zoomed out, by contrast, taking a broad panoramic shot of its surroundings. It sees many things at once, and by extension views the world as integral and fluid. Where the left sees time and space in discrete points, the right sees a more continuous waveform. Where the left dissects, the right synthesizes. Where the left disembodies, the right enchants. Therefore, the two lenses project a different world, summoning a profoundly varying picture and set of assumptions, values, and insights. McGilchrist's studies show that this neurodichotomy to be all but universal throughout the human kingdom, through varying but yet somewhat in application. This begs the question, why is this the case? Through studying of birds who possess a similar dual hemispheric framework with more direct eye-brain input, he could surmise that the left brain is there to help hunt and gather, find the seed, use the twigs, build the nest. Hence, it's transfixed its attention on detail and utility. The right, by contrast, is used to look out for potential predators, along with mates and just about anything else that involves novelty, uncertainty, and functioning apart from grabbing and getting. Why do all of us have two sides of our brain? This is why all of us have two sides of our brain. Moreover, we know the corpus callosum barely connects the two, leaving them mostly independent of each other. With all this in mind, McGilchrist paints an important metaphor to summarize the purpose and practice of the two characteristics in two people, the master or leader and his emissary, the hired surveyor of the town the master runs. The master is the right brain. For every new thing a human being learns begins in the right brain. The first time you ride a bike, learn a new language, construct a bookcase, or engage in novel action with little prior experience, the right brain is in charge. The right brain observes how things work together and are connected. McGilchrist employs the German term Gestalt to epitomize the right brain's worldview. All things in existence are embodied with this vantage point. Knowledge and experience feeds on itself. All this process changes as our activities are repeated. As tasks are reiterated, each step is systematized and a standardized process. Hence, a more mechanized muscle memory design takes hold. This phenomenon economizes the thought process. Less guesswork and more litany of task saves energy, limits spontaneous error, and can work only with certainty and routine. This is where the left brain takes charge, for it designs the breakdown of all activities into a shopping list of steps. When this process is in proper balance, distinguished use of both of these neural entities, often performed independently of each other, on occasion synthesized, enables both individual and larger society to thrive. As McGilchrist sees it, there is an optimal progress to this process. First, new experiences are taken into the right brain. The left brain then devises and sketches and maps to systematize the process and come up with points of elevation then evaluation reports back to the right brain for synthesis. In other words, the master, right brain, tells the emissary, left brain, to make a map of the territory, breaking down legends of the geography, grids of the terrain, scaling proportions and direction, and then report back to the master. The master will then analyze the map, compare it to the territory, and make a broader plan. This is what's supposed to occur, according to McGilchrist, when people are healthy and our culture is thriving and growing. This back and forth internal process exercises all our mental faculties to their fullest. The company produces when all of its members are in their rightful place. But what happens when this process breaks down? When communication between the hemispheres is not properly utilized and one side takes over. This, according to the author, underlies the hidden bug in the system, or perhaps a feature, but for that later. McGilchrist posits that internal collective dysfunction has been in play throughout Western civilizations, building up over time through the last few centuries. He studies everything from art to philosophy to psychology, sociology, politics to provide evidence of this development. Moreover, McGilchrist studying culture from primordial forces of human interaction, deciphers a pattern echoing, correlating cyclical process throughout Greco-Roman ancient history, with it connected the rise and fall of entire civilizations. He calls the right brain the master because in his neurological and psychiatric analysis, the right hemisphere understands the big picture. Therefore, it is far more qualified to render final judgments than the left. The left devises quality maps, but the left to its own devices, has a nature to mistake the map for the territory. Moreover, as it is certain the map has all the information. It cannot accept that anything else exists. Subsequently, it seeks to impose the auspices of the map, unwilling to consider anything not contained within it to be real. This nature makes hubristic, fallible judgments without the humanity and accepting the need for assistance. The left hemisphere is the ultimate Dunning-Kruger, as it promulgates modern expert trained to learn more and more about less and less. It surmises that its expertise is simply all there is. As long as it is expert in its field, it knows all there is to know. The right hemisphere, by contrast, understands Socrates' quote, "All I know is I know nothing." For you can you fathom the some span of existence, the far reaches of the vast cosmos, and the summit of knowledge from every wise person to ever have lived cannot contain but a mere sliver of reality. As Shakespeare famously stated in Hamlet, "There is more in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt in your philosophy." A funny thing happens on the way to late-stage civilizations. The left brain takes over, while new information commences on the right brain. Once the left brain makes its maps, it seizes the data, takes charge, defines the narrative, and fails to report back to the master. Hence, the vital sense-making phase of synthesis, embodiment, and unified exposition gets eclipsed. Instead, a dimensionally collapsed view of reality manifests, ultimately impacting every institution in the human endeavor. McGilchrist does not cavalierly render this hypothesis, nor are his findings the product of mere theoretical proposition. They reflect extensive rigorous scientific expertise and research. This unique magnum opus is the product of years of analysis. As a trained psychiatrist, he has utilized extensive studies from dozens of stroke patients, comparing all sorts of long-term effects of left brain and right brain strokes, where one or the other hemisphere has been disabled. He has delved into patterns of psychic conditions such as schizophrenia, along with patients who have been treated for corpus colostomy to stop seizures, as is where corpus callosum is cut, leaving the two hemispheres completely unlinked. The comparisons of his findings are startling. Our collapsed world tendencies reflect in everything from painting, music, architecture, political debate, medicine, science, all point to a narrowing of comprehended collective language of everything we're witnessing here could be documented in the late Roman days of the Roman Empire. The left brain thrives in placing information into categories and boxes. It loves to tick the box processing. It most often refuses to consider the multifaceted nature of real life, how phenomenon throughout nature often thrives within internal paradoxes. Things are rarely black and white, as the sages of old have long taught us. They are dynamic and mixed, rendering the context vital as the content. In the absence of such insight, institutions grow ossified and minds rigid. Money and power, rather than being seen as means to a greater end, become the end unto themselves. Cross-pollinated wisdom of the Renaissance person gives way to the narrowly conventional expert. Bit by bit, organizations seek to function. As they lose sight of any high-minded sense of the greater good, people lose faith in all institutions and turn on each other, and tribal conflict proliferates. Rules and regulations grow more prolific, numerous, indecipherable, and irrational, while society gets more litigious. This has all happened before, nearly always preceding the grim fate of society-wide collapse. Those who have learned from history, to paraphrase George Santayana, sense in their gut that we are doomed to repeat it. It's like reading a novel or watching a movie where you wince at the foreknowledge that disaster is afoot, yet feel powerless to prevent it. But is all this gloom and doom truly inevitable? If so, why? Has not nature, fate, or providence offered some life raft of salvation? For McGilchrist, the riddle of the Sphinx can be found in the matrix of the divided mind. The ship may be sinking, but the captain, the right hemisphere, if awakened, can still right the vessel to safety. But awaken he must. This left hemispheric takeover comprises a mutiny of the mind. The emissary left hemisphere is amply competent in devising atlas, but needs to report back to the broad-minded master. He must no longer be permitted to seize the ship, for the watery descent is clear. He provided as a world is highly bureaucratic, super-siloed, atomized, polarized, and dehumanized. This Kafkaesque nightmare should be all too familiar to us now. The question is, how do we awake from our slumber? Throughout his writing, lectures, and presentations, McGilchrist's research is extensive. Few can dispute that his expertise uniquely qualifies him for such a bold revolutionary pronouncement. His points are fleshed out meticulously, and his urgent warning profoundly compelling. The one thing amiss in this treatise, the missing piece of the puzzle, I would say, if such deep-seated process, which not only renders life unbearable, but fates entire civilizations decline and fall, echoes throughout the ages across continents. The untapped question is why and how does this happen? If life has evolved to thrive and grow throughout nature and progress so as not to stagnate and collapse, why is there this innate primal inclination leading repeatedly to our downfall? I would posit there is a clear and concrete answer gleaned from evolutionary biology that can address this question. An important clue could be found in the 2004 study called Lick Your Rats. In this research, 2 sets of rat moms and their babies or pups are studied. One mom was highly doting and attentive, keeping them in a warm bundle with their siblings, licking and grooming them regularly. The other rat mother was far more neglectful, leaving them abandoned one end of the cage while she wandered around the other. Their findings astounded them at the time. Not only the pups' behavior patterns markedly different, the nurtured rats from the abandoned rats, but the entire physiology was measurably altered. The abandoned rats exhibited high levels of stress hormones. They were jumpy, nervous, and startled at any little sound. The nurtured rats, by contrast, were calm, approachable, and got scared only when concrete and imminent danger was afoot. The abandoned rats also ended up with much weaker immune systems, aged faster, and suffered a wide variety of health problems. Hence, the high levels of stress hormone had an acute toll on their body systems. Much of the observations is hardly shocking, for we all know nurture affects nature, and animals, like people, are impacted by their experiences. What was surprising is how, when evaluated further, the rats' DNA was altered by the effects of the study, whether they had high levels of stress as a result of abandonment or low as a result of nurture. Their internal chemistry was permanently imprinted. Scientists refer to this as the metadNA. Think of it like the software on a computer, where the DNA is like a hardware components of the machine you pick up from the store. The software that interfaces outside through usage changes the makeup of the machine inside. Likewise, our experiences, especially in early life, mold and reshape our internal wiring. Just to be sure of their findings, the scientists switched the litters, swapping the moms, and the results only reaffirmed their original hypothesis. This begs the question, why would rats come with stress hormones that wear out their body so immensely? The study would clearly suggest that nature comes with a response system designated to take signals from its surroundings and respond accordingly to the purpose of survival. The stress hormones are necessary for maintaining a highly alert state for a small abandoned baby animal in a distressed environment, constantly vulnerable to being eaten. But because the stress hormone takes up such intense energy, wreaking havoc over time, the signals of a mother's lick indicating a fairly secure and benign surroundings, turns down the hormone so that it doesn't tax the system. In a similar but perhaps reverse process, the common experience of grasping, eating, and taking engages the left brain energies. It is forever pertinent to organic living experience, but it is novelty that necessitates the right brain. Hence, when new societies are developing, there is much in the world unknown. Like pioneers, people must explore and navigate their surroundings to thrive in this setting. That stated, once civilization has been constructed, its institutions, laws, and structure are more in place. Hence, this certainty sends the message to the novelty-seeking right hemisphere: you are no more necessary than tonsils or an appendix. Therefore, this vital sense-making organ is forgotten like an abandoned attic left to collect cobwebs and dust. For in nature is anything but inefficient. Whatever isn't necessary, deemed essential, is set aside lest it overload its energy. Therefore, knowing all this, the obvious question arises: so what are we to do to forestall this disaster? It would clearly seem part of the solution would lie in incorporating exposure to new and uncharted territory, physically, mentally, socially, and spiritually. This frontier searching and opening spirit will need to be incorporated in areas of such as culture, education, and the civic sphere. Discovery and adventure excite the right hemisphere. The thrills of exploration is innate in its nature, rejuvenating and strengthening our being. Perhaps one area to examine is how technology is utilized. We have tended to isolate distinctive areas of the brain when focusing on academic pursuits, especially when incorporating digital modalities. A more integral approach of using technology to tap into multi-sensory applications holds a promise to link the different ways of thinking. For example, the left brain, we know, handles math calculations and the computational approach, while the right brain inhabits more conceptual relational angles. In reading and language, phonics that focuses on rules and structure, letters can be found in the left hemisphere, whereas semantics, meaning, and comprehension and more in the frameworks more of the right. Traditionally, older societies use practices like music, storytelling, dance, and performance to teach children vital lessons. Notice all these practices utilized the senses, and it is time we apply this logic systematically to our digital tools. This can provide us a more holistic learning mindset. Another place that might hold promise and solution can be found in cross-cultural exploration. While McGilchrist's thesis is primarily predicated on Western history, being one of his areas of study, he speaks of many Eastern cultures as being better suited to cope with this brain hemisphere situation and societal dilemma. He notes that philosophies like Buddhism regularly interweave metaphors in their teachings and traditions that emphasize the complexities and paradoxes permeating nature, along with the mysterious qualities of the universe. This yin and yang understanding of seeming opposites in which it's in effect interact with each other more as a dance than a conflict. Complementarity, playing off of each other's differing qualities and limitations, betraying a common thread underlying all existence. This perspective, to McGilchrist's vantage point, appears to reinforce the wisdom of the right hemisphere's holistic view, counteracting the collapsing over certain doctrine imposed by the left hemisphere. If this is so, how did these cultures come about this mental tool that is sadly eluded to the West? Perhaps there is a reflection of an older society that recurringly hence borne witness to the cyclicals of dynasties, rises and falls over time, collective wherewithal to weather the storm. Whatever the cause, it would clearly seem this treatise is worth considerable examination discussion, for our troubled world is in urgent need of deep existential answers. And as often stated in mental health and wellness field, the first step of solving any problem is discovering, acknowledging it exists. It is time we all start using our brain, our whole brain.